Today we are going to build a promise ring. So I had a young customer contact me and he needs a ring rather quickly. So we're going to make it out of sterling silver, we're doing a textured finish, and he's going to get a little created ruby, and come on, let's see how it turns out.
We're going to start off by using some sterling silver stock. I'm melting it in my crucible, putting in a little bit of borax to help melt and clean the silver as I melt it. And we're going to just turn up the heat and get this thing to turn into a puddle, which is what it is right here. And we're slowly, carefully pouring it into my mold, and we'll take it out and see what we have. This is one of my favorite things about jewelry, is using fire to melt metal. It's like, there's something about it, watching it melt and then pouring it into a different form that is useful. Because those pieces you saw earlier are just leftover scraps from other projects. And it's useless unless I can melt it and turn it into something new. So I rolled it out in my rolling mill, and this hammer is the texturing tool that I'm using. He wanted a textured band, so we're texturing it on the anvil, and then I'm going to cut it. I think we're doing a size 6 on this. So I'm using the chart, material thickness, and then what size it is, and it tells me how many millimeters I need to cut this to length to come up with the correct size for the finger. And as I'm cutting this, I've been doing this about 20 years, and I still break saw blades when I cut material. I know someone's going to say, well, you should have a V-shaped bench pen or what have you. And I do have one. I just don't take the time to take it out and put a new one in because I like to get my jobs done quickly. So occasionally I'll break a blade. It's just part of the job. So I line the seam up and make the tightest seam possible. And then we'll go ahead and get the solder to flow. It's sterling silver hard solder, so it flows at a higher temperature than others to ensure that it is super strong and not going to come apart, because it's not a weld, but it's very, very close because the solder flows at such a high temp. Now, we want this promise ring to be very comfortable to wear. So we're going to smooth off the edges, round out the inside, and then right here I'm marking it so I can put a comfort fit on this band. The comfort fit radiuses the inside corners so the ring is very comfortable to wear. It goes on and off easier, and it won't cut you or dig into your finger whatsoever. And I do this to all my rings because honestly, comfort is one of the most important things in wearing a piece of jewelry. You want it to look good. It has meaning behind it, which is why you wear it. But you also have to have it be comfortable, so you want to wear it, or you don't even know you're wearing it, perhaps. The request on this ring was for there to be a section where the gem is set that is not textured. So although I already textured the entire band, I'm cutting out and creating borders for this little section that I'm going to smooth out so I can polish it and set the ruby in as requested. And this is a little tedious. It takes some time to get it just right and make sure there's no file marks or saw marks or anything like that. So I take my polishing wheel and we're just polishing this section up so that it's nice and shiny. And some of the steps I don't show are pre-polishing, or all the steps with my sanding drum like you see here. I do, different grits. So we go from super coarse to super fine, and here I'm stamping it sterling so we know what material it is. And that is one thing about all pieces of jewelry. They should be stamped with what material it is. And a moment ago we talked about comfort. Here I'm taking off the sharp edges on the outside of the ring, so that is extremely comfortable to wear too. Because when you're forming these rings, everything I try to make a square or, square edges. And after I make everything nice and square, I take the edge off so it's not sharp, not going to hurt anyone when they're wearing it. And here I'm finding my placement for the ruby and making a little dimple with my ball burr. And I ended up drilling a hole. I didn't get that recorded. And I'm removing the the flashing on the inside that happens when you drill a hole. And we're going to use a setting burr and create our seat for the little ruby and do a pre-fit and see how it looks. While setting this ruby, we have to make sure that it is flat. So you don't want it tipped one way or another. It has to be flush and flat. So that's what I did. I push it down and get it to sit just right. And then we're raising little beads of sterling silver over the corners of this created ruby to ensure that it can't go anywhere. It creates little tiny prongs that are flush with the surface of the band. And then I'm using a beading tool here to make them round so they look really nice and it has a great finish to it. The rest of this process is simply cleaning up my tool marks and polishing and then putting in the cleaner. Projects like this are something that are very enjoyable to work on because the meaning behind it is so significant. This is a promise ring. It's not an engagement ring yet. He wanted to make sure she knows that he's serious. So he's given her this promise ring as a precursor to an engagement. Rings like this are not part of my, Genesis collection of rings that I have created for my own personal brand, although it was a special request and someone was referred to me by another customer and they had this request, so we made it happen. And that's the beauty of jewelry. You can literally make anything from scratch if you have the skills, knowledge, and patience to do it. Some jewelers these days are just sellers. They have the pieces of jewelry in the case and they sell it. But I really appreciate the craftsmanship. The people who know how to swing the hammer and set the gems. They are the backbone of the jewelry industry.